Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Monday. This is Seattle Now. You won't be getting arrested for simple drug possession in Seattle today. The state Supreme Court struck down the law last week. The ruling opens up new possibilities for offering treatment to addicts. But in the short term, it could mean some people are cut off. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, let's get you caught up. With vaccine supply starting to come online, Seattle is setting up permanent vaccination sites across the city. Mayor Durkin says the city will open a mass vaccination site at the Lumen Field Event Center later this month that could eventually handle up to 21,000 people a day, if we have that much vaccine. The city will also open up permanent sites in Rainier Beach in West Seattle that could serve 2,000 people a week. Alaska Airlines is flying passengers aboard a Boeing 737 MAX for the first time today. The airline says it added extra training for maintenance workers and pilots to make sure they understand what's new about the plane. Alaska's first MAX will make trips between Seattle, LA, and San Diego. Seattle-based carrier is set to largely replace its Airbus fleet with the MAX over the next 4 years. And if you're someone who can pre-qualify to spend a small fortune on rent, then I've got a listing for you. For the first time in 20 years, there's a vacancy in the landmark Smith Tower penthouse. Yep, someone lives up there. The 1-bedroom, 1.5-bath apartment with spiral stairs to a 360-degree view of the city and Elliott Bay can be yours, all for the price of $17,000 a month. Back in 2016, 3 people were arrested in Spokane in connection with some stolen cars. The police found a small bag of meth in the front pocket of one of the suspects' jeans. She was sent to prison, even though she claimed the pants were borrowed from a friend. Her legal appeal went all the way to the state Supreme Court, and last week, a majority of the High Court agreed to overturn her sentence. And when they did, they declared the state's felony drug possession law violates due process because it doesn't require prosecutors to prove a person intentionally possessed the drugs or even know that they had them in their pocket. Because of that, Washington's law is unconstitutional. Some state legislators are trying to overturn that ruling. But for now, Seattle police say they won't arrest or detain anyone for simple possession. People already serving time for simple possession could eventually have their sentences overturned, and people who've yet to be sentenced could be released from jail, where they've been receiving some kind of drug treatment. That last one is a big deal to Caleb Banta-Green. He's the principal research scientist at the University of Washington Alcohol and Drug Abuse Institute. Caleb, thanks for taking the time.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Caleb, there are people in the justice system right now who are getting some kind of help managing an addiction. And I want to talk about the bigger criminal justice reform story here, but in the immediate right here and now, what's going to happen to these people now that the courts knocked down this law? What's already happened just in the past few days?
Yeah, so that happened on Thursday, and on Friday we started hearing about people being released from jail in a really unplanned, unexpected way. The nice thing is we have a lot of great community partnerships going on, and an example is in Walla Walla, where Blue Mountain Heart to Heart, which helps run a syringe service program and also distributes the overdose antidote naloxone, actually went over to jail Friday morning and gave them 24 naloxone kits. In the event that people are released who have opioid use disorder, they would have that naloxone kit, because what happens is when a person who has opioid addiction comes into jail, say they're using a 0.5 gram a day, they don't use for 5 days. They come back out, they've lost their tolerance, they use that 0.5 gram and they overdose. And the overdose rates are so much higher in the first couple of weeks after incarceration. So right now, there are efforts in the last few days to really try to prevent that crisis from happening of people dying upon release from jail.
Okay, that's the immediate impact. Long term, what are we thinking? What might happen?
So, roughly speaking, in 2019, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs had about 10,000 drug possession arrests. So, in theory, if this holds and stands and lasts, there wouldn't be those 10,000 arrests next year. So, that would have a really dramatic impact across Washington state on those individuals in terms of their health in the short term, social, emotional impacts on their friends and family, also the impact of having criminal charges. So those are things for the individual and how it impacts them. But for our society as a whole, it also means that things are changing. There's not going to be this kind of continuing cycle of people going in and out of jail, typically for very short stays for minor drug possession cases.
Unsurprisingly, Caleb, this is getting a lot of pushback. Some of it is seemingly a little sophomoric, but it makes a larger point. The old "these aren't my pants" excuse. You know, it sounds like something you might tell your mom if you got busted smoking cigarettes. What are we to make of that pushback right now?
Well, my understanding is in this particular case, this really is kind of a technicality of how the law was written. And then the issue is going to be is, does the legislature let this stand? Or do they try to actually codify it to say, we actually want to be intentional about this in terms of decriminalization? Or do they actually want to come back and modify the law, which would be fairly straightforward to do, to recriminalize those drugs?
Yeah, and I want to talk about that in a second because there are options for new ways to treat people moving forward now that this statute has been declared unconstitutional. Seattle police have issued their directives on how they're going to be handling this. Again, nobody's going to be arrested for simple possession anymore. People are upset because they see this as a public safety problem, Caleb. Nobody likes to see a knotted out drug addict across the street. Nobody likes to get their bike stolen because somebody's trying to support a habit.
Yes. So I agree with that entirely. And I think that it's very understandable the concern that people have, because the people who have substance use disorders are often really in survival mode. And I think what we need to recognize, though, is that the majority of people, we've surveyed them across the state, over 1,000 of them, they say they want to stop and reduce their use. But they also say that they're not able to access healthcare and they're not able to access treatment because it is so onerous and so difficult to get in. The rules and the barriers are so high to start and stay in that they're going to get kicked out anyway. So the idea is that, going to jail does not cure addiction. It helps us feel better in the short term. And I understand that, but it is not fixing anything. It might be punting things a week or two or a month down the road, but it's not fixing anything. And there's nothing less efficient than using the criminal legal system to provide treatment. That is just no reason that the pathway to treatment needs to be the criminal legal system. The pathway to treatment should be ready, easy access in the community to treatment, and just take the legal system out of it.
Okay, tell me about the possibilities. What could this look like here?
So, there is approximately a 75% treatment gap, meaning that about 75% of people who would benefit from effective treatment, whether it's opiate addiction, heroin, fentanyl, oxycodone, methamphetamine, cocaine, or even alcohol, most people are not accessing effective treatment services, the vast majority. And that's even when there are services out there. So the point is that many of those services are just not set up well for real human beings who particularly have a substance use disorder, which by definition is chaos inducing. So to take a person who's in chaos and say you now have to get through a very regimented, organized system, and if you mess up, you're going to get kicked out, that just doesn't work. So what we started doing in 2016 and 2017, initially in Seattle and now across Washington state, are low barrier services, low barrier access to a whole range of treatment and healthcare services for people who have substance use disorder.
Now, Caleb, I know you've been doing this work for a long time, and for people who have been trying to change drug policy and make an impact for people, where are we?
So, in general, we have a long way to go. This odd foible in state law is an opportunity to see what we can do different. The problem is we shouldn't be relying on odd foibles. We should be relying on purposeful, strategic, thoughtful, planful, humane drug policy. That's where we're going to have a system that makes sense and a system that's set up to support people to be successful. This reactive, accidental way is no way to create drug policy.
Caleb Banta-Green, great to talk to you.
Great, thank you.
Seattle Now is produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Clare McGrane, and Jason Pagano. Matt Martin helped produce today's show. Our music is by Matt Jorgensen. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.